strawberries or the spotted dick. And notice it's in my left hand. That's going to be important in a moment. And in the other hand, you have your knife, right? Usually like this with the pointy finger right there.
Pressure.
And it's touching your palm again. So consistent on both hands, right? It's almost an extension of you. You're almost Wolverine, but from the United Kingdom or Europe.
Hi guys, and welcome to another video.
Hello.
In this video, we're going to be looking at another Lost in the Pond one. Particularly, meal etiquettes. So the difference between Britain and America, and I guess just, you know, how when it comes to etiquette and how you kind of do things differently to us. Yeah. And that's a general understanding of it, isn't it?
I'm not really sure what to expect, but by the title, I guess it's what it...
I think we're about to find out, aren't we? One way or the other. Okay, so let's jump straight in and see what's what. Or not. There we go.
If they hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit thinking, here comes a payday.
Oh, really?
Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to how we eat, dining etiquette. It's so important, especially when you're meeting your American family for the first time. I'm not talking from experience, maybe just a bit. Cultural differences around the dinner table don't just come down to the words we use, like chips versus fries, or the dishes that we serve. So, you know, America's pecan pie versus Britain's spotted dick. And that is an actual dessert, okay? Look it up, just not on your work computer. But it's also about some of the mechanisms that we use to get it into our mouths. I'm still talking about food. And also some of the customs and politeness norms that comes with the process of eating.
Okay.
And so without further crab rangoon, here are 5 ways that British and American eating etiquette is very, very different.
Utensils.
Whether you call it cutlery like we do in Britain, or silverware or flatware, or in this case plasticware, because, you know, we are rationing, we can all agree that without them, meal times would be very, very messy, especially in America where they put sauce on everything. But the real question is, how do we hold them? And this was part of my existential crisis after I moved to the United States, because I grew up learning the European style, or as it might be known here, the continental style. And when I say that, I'm referring to what is the official utensil etiquette, right? As opposed to the official American etiquette. And I'm going to show you, I think anyway, some of the differences. I personally don't have either etiquette completely down because, in my wife's words, I still eat like a toddler. But it mostly comes down to how we hold the fork. In Britain, you hold it kind of like that, I think. So you've got it, the end of it's touching your palm, and then you sort of grasp it with your thumb and your pointy finger.
Maybe we should get a knife and fork for this. What do you think? Should we actually just try it?
You can do, yeah.
Okay, I'll be right back, guys. Sorry, 2 seconds. So, a knife and fork. So I would hold...
You need to look at what you're recording. You need to show your knife.
Oh, okay, over here. Yep. Yeah. Right, we're in this little gap here. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So I would hold a fork, I guess, kind of like that.
Kind of like how he's showing.
So I would eat, with my finger on this little bit here.
Yeah.
To apply pressure, and then, to slice, to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's there for pointing downward, right? And you stick it into the potatoes or the strawberries or the spotted dick. And notice it's in my left hand. That's going to be important in a moment. And in the other hand, you have your knife, right? Usually like this with the pointy finger right there.
Pressure.
And it's touching your palm again. So consistent on both hands, right? It's almost an extension of you. You're almost Wolverine, but from the United Kingdom or Europe. And then you do this. Right? Usually at a lower level, you wouldn't be able to see it because my arms are off screen now, so I'll put them back there. And then you cut into the potatoes or the strawberries or the creamy spotted dick. You can come with custard. That's normal. And voila, put it in your mouth. There's nothing on this. This isn't that scene in Hook where they eat invisible food. It goes this way round. Right, with the tines facing downward toward your tongue. In America, it's quite...
Before he goes on to America, though, so, I think that generally when cutting things, we cut like this, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes you might, on your fork, making it up. However, sometimes... There are times when we turn it around this way.
What's to be picked up.
And then scoop or scoop on. And
yes. I was going to say that.
So it depends. I would say it depends.
It depends what you're eating.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking over there. I apologise. I'm meant to be looking that way, but I'm looking at the camera to make sure I'm in this little void over here. But yeah, so yeah, I think
that's how we do it.
It's very accurate, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Quite a bit different, right? So people will hold their fork like this with the tines facing upward. In other words, to kind of scoop up the food, right? So they'll do that. And actually sometimes, not every time, I mean, I'm sure there are people that circumvent all of the things you hear in this very list, but sometimes Americans won't even use a knife, right? You'll just see them scoop something up, maybe a potato. We won't go through the entire list again, put it in their mouth. If they want to cut up things in that way, sometimes they'll do it with the fork, right? Don't recommend it with plastic forks. You know, you can get through these pretty quickly if you do that. But if they do use a knife, they may turn the fork like this into the potato and then cut like that. You've got it there, you turn it back around, it's in your gob, and there you go. Bob's your uncle, you've got potatoes.
You're like that?
And, you know.
You're like that?
And then you just turn it to stab.
Turn it like that?
No, you moved your fingers.
Oh, so you keep your hand... No, you can't.
Yeah, like that.
Okay, that feels awkward though, doesn't it? I get it. I can kind of see it because obviously, yeah, you're scooping, right? I get that.
And then turn.
It's too. The potato's too big. I need to stab it, or I need to break it. Okay, I can do this all with one motion
without moving your fingers on.
He's got it. He doesn't have it in these here though. He has it like down here somewhere. I don't know how he manages that.
I think he's holding it like this. He's holding it like this, and then he's doing. I feel so uncomfortable.
It does feel weird, doesn't it? When you're.
Yeah,
let's carry on. Sorry, as we're getting slightly distracted with this.
Learning
around, it's in your gob, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. You've got potatoes, and you know that's what a lot of Americans do. My father-in-law though did this. He had it like that and like that. He'd turn it that way, and then like that. It sort of looked. I should tell you that my in-laws were cavemen. But it was through those very cavemen / dear relatives of my wife that I was first introduced to our next entry.
Saying grace.
Yes, saying grace. This one is quite a tough entry in many ways because, you know, in order to talk about it, I do have to somewhat generalise. And also, I don't have much data to back up what I'm about to say. It's more observationally driven, right? So when I lived in England for 27 years of my life, I don't say that with disdain. It was a good time. But in all that time, I don't really remember sitting down to a dinner function of any kind and really sort of saying grace beforehand. In other words, kicking off the meal with a sort of faith-based thanks. Now, part of that, and again, this is where the generalisation comes in, so bear with me, but in England, we tend to be less sort of like publicly open or just sort of even privately open, if you can be, among your family members about your religious beliefs. Whereas in the United States, I think people are more sort of proud of that, whatever their religious faith is. And so sometimes in some families, and this again could be regional, so I might well be generalizing, but some families, including the extended relatives that I married into, I didn't marry them, I married into the family. Some families, and I gather maybe quite a lot of families here in the United States, particularly at special events like Thanksgiving or maybe even a homecoming of some kind, will sort of say grace before the meal, and there'll usually be one family member who stands up and says it on behalf of the entire group, and then you say amen and go about your way. For me, it was quite weird at first, I think. Now, I'm very respectful of other people's religious beliefs. I didn't really know what to do except just sort of sit there and then wait for it to be done, and then because I had half a mind on the turkey. So what are you going to do? And because I'm generalizing here, it's important for me to say that this is my experience. I'd be very interested to hear other people's experiences, other Europeans' experiences of coming here and maybe having to say grace when they're not used to it, or, you know, Americans that don't themselves practice this. I've also heard it.
That's actually quite interesting because, as Lauren said, I mean, you know, I've got quite a vast family and I can't recall anyone saying any form of grace or religious thing like at dinner times. It's just not a thing here.
For me, however, I was born and grew up in Romania, so I can see I have seen this a little bit more.
So
than I have seen
it. Have you done
here.
it
as a child? Yes,
okay.
Not. I wouldn't say every time. Maybe like Lauren says, with special occasions.
Yeah.
And people in the family take turns to do it.
Yeah.
But I have definitely not seen it here.
No, I don't think I've ever seen it here.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever witnessed it in Romania either, in fairness, but then
No,
it's more a formal family
it's like
dinner,
a
isn't it, I
family,
guess?
like a intimate family thing, not necessarily like a big gatherings sort of thing. So
it's quite, I think that would actually, it would be interesting, wouldn't it? Because, you know, you obviously you're used to a certain way of doing things, right? So then you go out for dinner, you get invited over to dinner from your American friends or family, and then you sort of sit down, and then you're just about to dig in,
and you're not expecting
and then
it.
you're like that,
maybe.
and they're like, right, what?
Yeah, you feel.
I felt a bit awkward, but I guess that's what he said. You know,
That's what he said. Not everyone does it,
No,
but
obviously-
also.
Well, you've got to be
It's
respectful.
not-
Everyone's
yeah.
entitled to their own beliefs and
Exactly.
views, but
Because I guess when they come to your dinner at your families and you don't say grace, then they'll just have to go on with it themselves.
yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? Nice.
Or, you know, Americans that don't themselves practice this. I've also heard it can go one step further here where the whole family holds hands. You know, I definitely draw the line at that, especially right
Seen
now.
that movie.
The best way that I can put this for British people watching back home is, you know, in football when, you know, somebody dies and they have a minute's silence within the stadium, and then when the minute's silence is up, they all erupt in applause and all of that. It's kind of like that, minus the applause. You know, it's just an amen. But the energy after that is great because you all want to tuck into your food. And because the energy's so good, that leads us on to our next entry.
Okay. Table chatter.
Oh, I don't mind a bit of chatter and exceptionally weird noises. And at an American dinner table, you're going to get a lot of chatter. Usually, again, this is another generalization, but on the whole, this is my experience. And I'm one of those people who doesn't think that Americans are always loud, as the stereotype dictates, but one exception tends to be in restaurants, right? I do hear the volume go up there as compared to Britain, where it feels like we're always battling with this war within ourselves to not air our dirty laundry in public. I'm not saying we don't talk at dinner tables, don't get me wrong. It feels observationally, once again, and again, there's no data on this. There's not somebody going around measuring the decibels in every restaurant in either country, especially right now because they're all closed. But that's my general experience of it. Now, I could be getting thrown off course a little bit here because, you know,
I think from my observation, generally, I think British people are a little bit more reserved, and I would say Americans are generally a bit more charismatic. So I think that's the difference. So Americans are very, you know, very chatty, sociable.
Out there, chatty, maybe, yeah.
Maybe English are just a little bit antisocial. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
My wife's family are really loud. Don't tell them I said that, although this is a public video. They know it's true. I've told them before, and that's why we've not spoken in a year. But here in America, you might be in a restaurant, sitting down with just one other person, trying to have a quiet, intimate conversation. And to your right, there's this really loud family with a 5-year-old running around with a stupid hat on that he got from the restaurant, right? So they're further enhancing the volume of said family. And then on the other side, there's clearly what is a date happening. And the woman is just sitting there quietly, looking quite glum, while the man very audibly and haphazardly talks about all of the Fortune 500 companies he's worked for. And she stares into space, presumably thinking of all the ways that she can get out of there. But on the other hand, once you do get used to that sort of raised volume, it does add to the atmosphere, you know. And if you're already in a good mood and you enter somewhere where, you know, thousands, that's a huge restaurant, hundreds maybe, where there's lots of people and they're in a good mood and it just sort of bounces off the walls, you know. But speaking of restaurants, that brings us on to our next entry. Servers. My heart does go out to all of the servers and anybody else to whom this applies around the world who can't go into work right now. And a huge thank you to delivery servers who are able to keep people fed who might need it. But, you know, back in peacetime when the restaurants were still open, there was quite a marked difference between, you know, British servers and American servers and the way they sort of conduct themselves at the dinner table while you're eating your dinner. In Britain, they're quite standoffish, and I know that's just a trait of British people in general, I get that, but they don't have the incentive, which we'll talk about in a minute, to constantly be coming back to your table and seeing how you're doing, checking if you need a refill on that water, because you probably won't get one anyway. I'm joking, of course you'll get a free refill on your water, just nothing else. Often, know this, if you want their attention, you're going to have to get their attention yourself, and that includes when it comes time to pay the bill. Whereas in the United States, and each restaurant has its different policy on this, you the waiting staff will come to your table every 5 minutes, usually, just to see how you're doing. And it seemingly doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a seriously one-sided conversation about the Fortune 500 companies you've worked for. They will still come over and go, hey, what's up? How's that tenderloin working out for you? And there are a couple of big reasons, I think, that American serving staff do this.
Before it continues. So I kind of agree with this, though. So especially with the British side, sometimes it is a pain, isn't it? You want something like you have unlimited refills and then never come back.
I wouldn't say they're standoffish, though. I think that's what I didn't necessarily agree.
I'm going to smooth this cut.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily agree with that.
No, but in fairness, though, I think in recent times, we do have a bit more of the kind of the American, some like TGI Fridays and things like that. They're a bit more Americanized in terms of restaurants, and the service there is considerably better. So, they are quite friendly. They're very smiley. But generally speaking, I would say you do have to kind of get their attention if you want anything. Like, they don't go out of their way. In some they do, but generally they don't, and you've got to flag them down. And when I was in America, the customer service was second to none. It was amazing. I know that it's to do with tipping as well. So obviously they want to have a good impression to get tips. But I'm fine with that, because it's so nice. Like, I really enjoyed that about America. Like, every time you go somewhere, you just feel appreciated. I know you're probably not. They're probably like, just give me your money, But it felt nice, and I quite liked that. Like, it obviously, again, I think it goes towards the sort of the charismatic side of things, and they are quite bubbly and chatty anyway. But it was definitely a positive. I really liked that when I went to America, and it was almost to the point where it did stand out to me, and it's very memorable as well because I liked that so much.
Well, I haven't been to the US yet, so I don't have that.
You're going to be blown away, I'm telling you.
However, the comparison I have
with
the Romanian waiters who, especially years and years ago when I was still home, and compare to the UK / English customer service, again, for me, was a massive upgrade. So I don't know.
I can level with you here as well, because when we've been to Romania, it is a bit like that, isn't it? It's almost just like
not
people
everywhere,
don't. No, I mean, in some of the restaurants, not all of them, it does feel like the servers just don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And serving you is a bit of a task which they don't really want to be doing.
Yeah.
And it kind of it rubs off that way as well, doesn't it?
It comes across, yeah.
But yeah, back on topic. Let's jump back in. Otherwise, we're never going to finish this one.
Tenderloin working out for you. And there are a couple of big reasons, I think, that American serving staff do this. Firstly, the company often dictates it. It's seen as a kind of data-driven way of, having good customer service. But having good customer service could well dictate this.
That's it. Aha.
Have they tried antifreeze with that? No. Well, he might go back to his milk phase eventually. Yeah. So the dreaded tip, or at least it was dreaded to me when I first moved to America, actually, when I landed at Philadelphia Airport. This is the first time I remember having to sort of navigate the American tipping system because I bought a drink at a bar at that very airport. And having bought the Jack Daniels, or 6, I'm not a good flyer. I turned to the gentleman next to me and I asked him, how does tipping work? And, he very, very kindly offered, well, whatever the amount is on your receipt, just give them 85% of that, and that's about good. That's standard. That was a lie, and I ended up almost bankrupt. Firstly, in the United States, regardless of the amount, it's very much expected that you do tip, because that's basically how servers make their wage. And the standard amount that you're expected to tip is the complete opposite of 85%. It's 15%, right? But if you thought it was good service, or just to be sort of a good person, really, you can definitely tip more than that. I typically tip, just try saying that after 6 whiskeys. I did that night. I typically tip, particularly if I'm on a trip, 20%, or I might even round up to 21 if it kind of requires it. Tipping of some kind is expected here. In the UK, if you're thinking of going there, firstly, don't do that right now. But, you know, if after all this blows over, you are fancying going to the UK, then you're not required to tip at all, right? I mean, people get paid a sort of living wage, more or less, for being a server in the UK. It's good practice. You know, if you want to do that, you certainly can. 10% is recommended. And, you know, growing up in the UK, I never really did tip all that often, I must say. I think if I were to live there now, I probably would do so a bit more. It's not expected. I mean, servers aren't going to expect you to tip. Although, if they hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit thinking, here comes a payday, right? Whereas it's the other.
I must admit, that is something real though, isn't it? Like here, no one really expects tip. And I quite like that. Like, unfortunately, that's one thing I dislike about America, being the tipping side of things. Because for me, if you're going to tip someone, you're tipping them because they excel at what they're doing, right? So it's like, obviously, it's unfortunate because the servers, I guess, have a low salary and it's made up by the tips. Whereas here, I guess everyone gets like a decent or reasonable salary. So tips is more of a bonus. And even then, tips go in a pot and then they're shared between, you know, the company and the way, however it works.
Not the company, but I think the kitchen staff as well as the waiting staff share those.
But I like the concept of tipping in England because where it's not expected, you don't feel obliged. If you have a bad meal or the service wasn't very good, you don't tip. It's as simple as that. You know, there's no reason to leave a tip. Whereas if the service was good, the food was nice, then you sort of show your appreciation by tipping. And I think that's how the system should be.
Yeah, I guess if tipping is normal and expected, then the only way to recognize excellent service is by just giving
tipping
more,
isn't it?
But then how do you recognize poor customer service if everything's expected anyway?
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, if you go to an establishment, you go to an establishment in America, right?
Yeah.
You get a very mediocre meal. You're not very happy with it. You don't tip, right? If you go back there, I dread to think what they're going to do to your food.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's a thing.
It's a bit of a weird concept. I think that's something that England do right, and not that America do it wrong, because I can see why it is the way it is. But I feel like it's kind of not using the system the way it should be used, if that makes sense.
I personally
it's more for gratitude, isn't it?
I personally believe that the companies should be paying their employees at least a living wage.
Absolutely.
And then those that are good at their job will get recognized by customers. That's kind of how I see it. But
me too.
Obviously, it's a big machine, very well oiled at the minute. So I don't think
nothing will
change,
right?
No.
So it is what it is. But that's just kind of our faults of it, really, isn't it?
The way round here, as soon as servers hear a British accent, they must be filled with dread. Or maybe that's not true. Maybe servers hear a British accent and think, he's ripe for manipulation. You know, I've had some bad experiences. That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me today. And, you know, it's kind of sad that I couldn't practice a lot of these things for the video, except for the knives and forks, you know, and those were the last plastics I have. As ever, a reminder that you can keep up with me and all my stupid ramblings on Twitter at LostInThePondUS. And if you've not had a chance to do so, why not subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond?
Well, that was Lawrence from Lost in the Pond. Another wonderful video and a nice comparison between the two. It's quite informative as well. Especially in certain aspects like the cutlery. That was quite fun, actually.
And I love his sense of humour as well.
Yeah, his dry, witty sense of humour always gets me, to be honest. What do we have? We had the cutlery etiquette, which is ever so slightly different. But then I think that can just depend. That can be. It's a household thing, isn't it? Even you know, like you have a right and a specific way. I guess not right and wrong. You know, how often do I just pick up a fork and I'm just like a caveman? I'm just get in there, you know. But so what else was there? The server, we kind of knew about the tipping thing, so that was. But having experienced it, I do, as I said earlier, the American customer service. I haven't experienced I've experienced a fair amount of customer service, and from what I have experienced, the American is amazing and really second to none. And it's kind of a well-known thing. I mean, even for me, having never been there, I know this to be a thing. You will love it, honestly. It's one of those things that you don't really think about it. But
does it ever feel a bit too much? Like if like Lauren said, they come around to your table every 5 minutes to ask how things are going every month or so.
I suppose it could though, couldn't it? Because after all, you think, just leave me alone. I'm trying to read. And I don't know if you guys ever notice it, but I always notice it, right? Maybe it's because I'm just greedy, right? I take the biggest mouthful of my life. It goes in, and then I'm like,
have to thumbs up it.
It's literally every time. Anyway,
just your luck.
It is, but I reckon they stand over there and they wait, and they're like, "He's just taking a massive mouthful.
That's the right time
I'm going to
go.
do it. I'm going now." And then you're like, "Oh." Yeah. Well, it is what it is, I suppose. So yeah, if you like that video, thanks for watching.
Yeah.
But until next time, bye.